This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to our latest episode of Late Boomers. Today we have as our special guest, Claire Pedrick, coach and host of the Coaching podcast, and she's an author, mentor, coach, and keynote speaker.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Claire is the author of the books Simplifying Coaching and also The Human Behind the Coach. Claire also walked the Camino in northern Spain and Queen Charlotte Way in New Zealand. She has some very interesting charity successes we'll ask her about, and we'd love to hear all about everything, Claire. So welcome to Late Boomers.
Well, thank you for having me, Kathy and Mary. What a delight to meet you and your listeners.
Thank
you. Great to meet you and to have you too.
Thank you.
Thanks. Please tell us about your background and education and what you would say led to your present coaching career.
None of my background or education.
Oh, good one.
So that's such a good question, because we are the product of our family line, aren't we?
Yes.
So I went to this is relevant. I went to a seminar the other day in person, which was very exciting. And one of the people who was speaking was talking about Generation Z. Mm-hmm. And she'd got this slide up about different generations. Mm-hmm. And it said that I was a baby boomer, which I am technically, mm-hmm. but I kind of resist it. Mm-hmm. And then it said that one of my kids is Generation X and one of my kids is Generation... But we were all allocated to certain boxes on this map. And mm-hmm. I thought, actually, I'm much more Gen X than I am Boomer. And I think that's because my parents were early adopters. So they always were into the next thing early. So we were the first people in the street to have a TV. My dad got the first computer when nobody had a computer at home. So, wow. So my parents were always ahead of the game and bringing in new stuff. And I think that gave us myself and my brother, a very kind of innovative, I suppose, approach to life. Mm-hmm. My parents were always around people who were younger than them, and had some really interesting friends. Although when my dad died in the autumn, and all these people came to the funeral, of course, I thought their friends were really young. I discovered that their friends were like 5 years younger than them. But when I was growing up, of course, there seemed like a big gap between my parents and friends.
They probably would tell you. They would probably tell you that our friends that are coming over are much younger. You know.
Yeah, because they were. So I went to university. I did a degree in applied statistics, which I would not recommend to anybody. I didn't like it. I wasn't very good at it, but I had a lovely time at university. And I managed to pass somehow or other, and knew that the only thing that I wasn't going to do was that, because it really wasn't my thing. But then I trained to be a teacher of mathematics, which I absolutely loved. And one of the things that I learned as a teacher of mathematics was that my kind of thought experiment is that most people reach a ceiling in mathematics. And once they reach that ceiling, they can't get beyond it, however hard they try, really. And you know, for some kids, they reach that when they're 8 years old. I reached it, I think, on day 2 of university, which is probably part of the issue about having struggling to get a degree. Anyway, I trained to be a teacher of mathematics, and I got a job in Kenya in a Harambee rural secondary school, in a school that had 6 teachers and the whole curriculum. And
Wow.
it was a school that was entirely funded by parents. The government didn't pay any money. And I lived in an area which was small coffee farms. So each person had their own, what you call a shamba, which is like a little farm, and they grew coffee. So you'd be teaching. When the coffee harvest came, you'd go into the classroom in the morning. There wouldn't be anybody there because they'd all gone home to pick the coffee, and then school would start again.
And was
when
it only boys? Only for boys, the school?
Boys and girls.
Oh, they were
good.
educating the girls.
Yes.
That's good.
So the boarders, so we had a boarding house for, I don't know, 50 students. The boarders were all boys, but a lot of the day students were girls.
That's good.
And it
And you
changed my
taught
life.
mathematics and everything?
And I taught mathematics, which is why I'd gone. But when you only have 6 teachers and you have to teach the whole curriculum, I also taught English language. I taught African literature. You know the thing that says the teacher's always one page ahead of the students? Well, that was so very true.
You're like reading the material right before you teach it. Yeah.
I taught business studies. And living amongst those people who I now call my friends was just absolutely life-changing, because I come from a life of privilege, right? Because I come from one of the richest countries in the world. Therefore, I come from a life of privilege. And to be able to see the world through the eyes of people who don't was an extraordinary thing. Absolutely extraordinary. And I can remember one day, I got paid nothing, but I got paid what local teachers get paid, and it was enough. Because we had no electricity, no running water, no bills, no rent. Because the teacher, if you're a teacher in a school like that, you get a house, a small stone house on the school compound. So there was no rent, no bills, because we hadn't got any services. So if you've got enough to eat and do a bit more than that, then you've got plenty of money. And I used to pay the school fees for one of my students because his parents didn't have money and he wasn't able to come to school. And he was very clever. And he was going to be the way out for his family. So one day his mother invited me and there was another a white European teacher on the same compound. And they invited us to go and eat. And we arrived at their house, and the house was made of mud, which is the normal structure for a house. So that's just how you make the houses. So the house was made of mud, but everyone else had a tin roof. But their roof was made out of opened cans of Blue Band margarine. Opened cans, all put together. So when it rained, the water came through the gaps in the roof. And this lady cooked us a meal, which we ate. And when we left, the tradition in that area is that when you leave, you are given a gift. And she gave us an egg.
Oh.
And it was the only thing that she owned that was worth anything in the market. And she gave us this egg. And of course, that is such a generous gift, and you have to say yes. And that egg changed my life because you have to learn to graciously say, thank you, I accept your egg. Now here, if somebody gives you an egg, it's nothing, is it? It's just an egg.
If they gave you a diamond, you'd say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't accept this.
Yeah, but you had to say thank you for the egg. So, yeah, I always remember William Miner's egg. Well, his mother's egg. Extraordinary. It was just the most extraordinary thing. And I'm so grateful to have done it as my first job.
How long did you stay there?
What a wonderful experience.
I stayed there for 2.5 years. And what I wanted more than anything else was to stay for longer.
Mhm.
But the organization that I'd gone out with knew that, I know it sounds really upside down, but it was much easier to be there than it was to be here.
Really?
And so they were of the mind that if you decided to stay, you had to come back to Europe, and you would make the decision to return from Europe. You would not make the decision to stay from there, because staying was easy. Because if you could live the life, it was much less stressful than living here. So I come back here and I moved to London. Oh la la.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and it's noisy and people and it's expensive and you have to pay for everything and all of that stuff. So yeah, really interesting. And then when I got my job in London, it was coaching, which is what I do now. I was 25 years old, and it
Mhm.
wasn't called coaching because coaching wasn't called anything.
Mhm.
It kind of existed, but it wasn't an industry or a profession.
So someone had to
It's called,
train you,
and I
right?
kind of worked it out.
Oh, okay.
It was non-directive work consultancy. So
Mm.
I had to listen to people, help them work out what they wanted, and then support them to find ways of doing that. So half of it was helping them
Mhm.
work out who they were and what they brought to this place. And then the other
Mhm.
half was we had I'd like to say database, but in those days we didn't have a database.
You
I had a
had
ring
cards,
binder.
right? Index cards.
Yeah, Rolodex.
Rolodex.
With the names of organizations who were looking for nurses and plumbers and teachers and whatever all around the world.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's where it started. And then 10 years
Interesting.
later, I found out I was
Brilliant.
a coach.
Well,
Brilliant.
I'm curious about you. You've said that partnership is important to you, but before you answer that, I'd love to know if there is a happy ending to the story about the boy that you paid for when he went to school. Do you know what happened to him?
I don't know what's happened to him now. I mean, I am now in touch with a number of students who were in the school, and you can tell what impact you have on the world when you get contacted on Facebook by a girl who's got a Kikuyu name, a Kenyan name from her tribe, and her name's Claire. And you go,
Oh,
did I teach
like,
your mother or your father?
oh,
Mhm.
that's wonderful.
So there's a
Well,
little
Sweet.
tribe of Claires, which is really
oh,
beautiful.
what a
Yeah.
tribute to you. That's wonderful. So tell me about partnership and why it is important to you.
Well, I think that I've told you that already by telling you about William Minor and his egg. And I guess that my first massive lesson in partnership was learning to accept the egg from that lady.
Mm.
Oh.
Because, in fact, I was recording a podcast this morning with a guy called Remy Adekoya, who's a Nigerian Polish guy, and we were
Oh.
talking about partnership. And the fact that often it's hard to work together when somebody gives you power or when they take it away from you. So for me, partnership is about an equality of power. So in my profession, coaching, often there's a kind of fantasy that somebody who's sorted works with somebody who's not sorted, so that you
Mhm.
can kind of absorb their sortedness. But it isn't. But then you think, oh, I need to be like Claire Pedrick because she's so sorted. Well, I'm not actually. I'm very human and rather broken, like everybody else, and really happy to say that. So for me, partnership is about an equality, whatever that looks like. That means that I'm not above or below anyone else. Now, actually being able to
Mhm.
work like that is really hard because often people will give us power we don't deserve.
Mhm.
I had a really, really interesting conversation the other day with a colleague, and he said, so in a very, very small part of the world, I'm famous, but it is a very, very small piece of the world. And he said
Mhm.
to me, what's it like to be famous? And I said, it's just really weird. And I'm glad that people know my name and they don't know my face. Because because I'm just me. When I go in, I'm just ordinary old me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine what it would be like to be famous. Because if you're famous, who can you be in? There's no partnership, is there? Because everybody wants something, or they think you're better or different or worse or whatever it is they decide. Whereas, in the end, we're all human beings, aren't we? We're all just ordinary human beings trying to get along in our best way. And some of us have had a good ride and some of us have had a really hard ride. And some of us have made the best of what we've got and some of us have lost it all or wasted it all. But actually, we are all humans. And for me, being able to work human to human is really important. And I don't know better or different from anyone else, but I can. And my kind of art, I suppose, is to facilitate somebody else to do some really good thinking about their own stuff so that they can come to some really good outcomes.
Great.
That's
But
beautiful.
that has to be done in partnership for me.
Yeah, I understand. And you've talked about being a disruptor. What does it feel like to be a disruptor in your profession?
Now I'm old and grey and I've got a saggy face. It's fine. It was much harder to. It was much harder to be a disruptor before I had grey hair.
Oh,
I think.
tell us about how'd you define a disruptor?
Well, I think a disruptor is somebody who says something against the status quo. So in my industry, my industry is probably bigger in the States than it is in Europe even. In my industry, knowledge is power and more is better. And I go, well, it isn't actually. Knowledge isn't. I think it isn't. I don't think that knowledge is. I think knowledge is power, but knowledge doesn't make you a better coach, and more isn't better. Sometimes less is better. So I've sort of quietly been a disruptor for many, many years, and COVID coincided with the publication of Simplifying Coaching. So Simplifying Coaching was finished 2 weeks after the pandemic started. So it was finished about 4 years ago. And up to then, I'd been kind of quietly getting on with my life, doing mostly work on site, going places and seeing people and doing stuff. And then when the world locked down, people from all over the world started asking me if I would do a webinar for them for an hour on a Tuesday lunchtime or a Thursday afternoon or whatever day it is today, Monday at 7 p.m. UK. And up to then I'd had to say no because it was always interfering in the flow of other things I was doing. And then when we all got stuck at home, I just said yes to everything. And then I started finding my voice. So Simplifying Coaching then came out. We were still locked in. And what I discovered was that I expected to be absolutely annihilated by the profession, saying you can't possibly say that simpler is better. And instead, I had people going, this is amazing. I've thought that for a long time. Nobody's ever said it before. So I quite like being a disruptor. There's a poem in I don't know if you've seen it, about when I am old, I shall wear purple. Have you seen that poem?
No, I don't think so.
Can you do it by memory?
No. No. Why can't I do it by memory?
I feel like you've got purple on today on your scarf.
Yeah, but it's something about when I'm old, I'll wear purple, and then she talks about doing all the things that you're not allowed to do, and and it's just the most beautiful poem. I'll send it to you.
Okay,
thank you.
It's your female listeners will love it.
Oh, maybe the men too.
Yeah, they can wear purple too. But it's, I'll shout at people in the street and do all sorts of things. But that poem is about being a disruptor. And I do think that age gives us more permission to be a disruptor, partly because we've got nothing to lose.
I agree.
And we were we went out for a curry last Friday night, and they gave away our table. And there was nowhere else to eat in town because everywhere was full. And I was really angry on the outside, but I wasn't angry on the inside. And I think that comes with age. And I want to go, don't mess around with a woman who's not angry on the inside, but is angry on the outside. We got the table. But there's something, isn't there, where you can get away. I think you can get away with things when you get to a certain age that you can't get away with when you're younger. Because I think that for me, I've got less to lose. And therefore, I think I'm willing to be a bit more radical about what I say.
I think that comes from living simpler too.
Yeah.
Because then you have less to lose. So tell us what the difference is between mentoring and supervision, which you do in coaching, right? Both?
Yeah, I do coaching, mentoring, and supervision. They're different.
Is there
They're
one?
different. There is a difference, but not everybody agrees which is which. And I don't think that matters as long as you agree that they're different. So I'll tell you what my definitions of the three are. And if people attribute different names to them, that's fine by me. So for me, coaching is facilitating someone else to think. And all I do is I provide a space that enables them to feel heard and get new insights. So that's coaching. Mentoring does a bit of that, but also I know something you don't know, and I'll tell you if it's useful.
Oh. So it's a difference in power there.
Yes, and I think it's a difference in content. So I think that the mentor can offer their story if it's useful. I think mentoring doesn't work. The worst moment in mentoring is if a really wise and experienced mentor with a lot to share has a conversation with somebody who's being mentored by them who's hungry. Because what happens is that the mentor just pours beautiful things into this other person who goes, oh, this is wonderful. But nothing changes because it was too much. So the person who's being mentored goes away and they go, oh, that was marvelous. That was so lovely. I really enjoyed that. But nothing changes because it was just far, far too much information. So I think that mentors can learn from coaching about working out how much and which bits to pour in. And then for me, supervision is really enabling people to work safely and to think about what's going on inside of them when they're doing work. So whether that's a nurse or a therapist or a coach or whoever. So the three disciplines are similar and different.
I see. And I was going to ask you to tell us what mentors can learn from coaching, but I think that's what you just covered. That was the answer.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think the tsunami mentor, which is what I've just described, can learn to be a bit more of a watering can from coaching. So my favorite coaching question is which bit? So you're in a coaching conversation with somebody. And so imagine I'm coaching you, Mary, and I say, what would you like to think about? And you say world peace.
Okay.
And I go, instead of going, tell me what you think about world peace, at which point I know all about what you think, but you don't know anything new. I'll say to you, which bit of world peace would you like us to think about today? And that narrows it down. And that's also the same in mentoring, which is which bit of that is useful.
Specifics. Yeah.
Just a bit.
That's hard with world peace, though, because
it's really good
hard
advice.
to be specific. There's so many places that are upside down right now.
I don't think she's coaching on that. It's an example.
I know that.
But if somebody comes, then I'd say, so which bit of world peace would you like to think about? And you might say, actually, my question's about peace in Israel. And then I might say, so which bit about that is on your mind? And you'll go, actually, it's this bit. And so we get down to, how can I talk to my neighbor about peace? And then we can do some really good work, because then you've really narrowed it down. But I think often in conversations, whether it's mentoring or coaching or whatever, or just around the dinner table, we try and do things that are too big, and then we don't really do them properly.
Yeah.
So I call that right sizing, which is making the work the right size.
Oh,
So we can actually do
like
it.
that.
That's so helpful, because so many people have the big picture in front of them, but they are not able to narrow it down, even about themselves. When you ask people what they want, most people might say, I don't know. I don't know what I want. Or I want to be rich, or I want to be famous, or whatever, but they don't narrow it down. So nothing can happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, tell us about your coaching books, and tell us what made you write your second one.
Well, the first one I was never going to write, because every time I think about it, I take something out. So that's never a good thing for a book. You get published and you go, I don't want that chapter in, I want to take that chapter out. And then I was speaking at a conference, and somebody from a publishing house came over, McGraw-Hill.
Oh.
Which is, yes, exactly. They go, have you got a book you'd like to write for us? You don't go to McGraw-Hill. No. You say, well, actually, I have. And they were really taken by it. So Simplifying Coaching came out, and what became clear really quickly was that there were lots of people who loved it and couldn't do it.
Why is that?
Because they needed it to be more complicated than I was saying it was in the book. So two things happened. One is I was working with Lucia Baldelli, who's my co-author, and we were doing some one-on-one work together. And I said to her, I wonder whether the work we're doing might be good content for a book. And if that's true, we should write the book together. And then the other thing was, these people were going, I don't want to work more simply, because I think that won't add value. Because in order to add value, I need to do more.
Oh.
So the book kind of emerged, but the book that was published wasn't the book we wrote.
They changed it.
So we bought the domain name completely. It's totally a different book.
Oh.
So we bought the domain name Growing into Mastery, which is what the book was going to be called, and off we went. And then really quickly we realized that we didn't like the book we were writing, because it was about bigging up. And actually, what we were really recognizing made for good dialogue is people's capacity to be human. And to be honest, and to be humble, and to be vulnerable, and to be real, and to be brave.
That's beautiful.
Big
we all need to recognize that in ourselves.
So we had to start again.
Yeah.
Well,
on a different
so the first
note,
half of the book's about those things.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
Sorry. I was going to ask you an entirely different subject. Do you want to still talk about the second book? What's
really
the second book
briefly,
called?
The first half of the book's about the qualities. The second book's called The Human Behind the Coach. And the first half's about the qualities that we need to build to be able to be more human in any kind of dialogue or in any kind of conversation. And the second half of the book is what it sounds like and what it looks like. So it's about the sound of the conversation, the music and the dance of the conversation. And I was interviewing this afternoon a choreographer, and we were talking about the dance, the way we move in conversations, and actually what impact that has on partnership. It's really interesting.
Yeah, can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, but first of all, I'll tell you, I freak out every time I speak to a musician or a dancer, because you think I might all this wondering might be wrong, but she said it wasn't wrong.
You won't want to know that we're musicians and dancers.
Are you really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to know your
She's a dancer.
stories.
I'm not a dancer.
Are you?
Well, we both sing.
Oh, how amazing. So one of the things about the music of partnership is that in order to create a dialogue where the other person is going to respond to you, you have to offer. Because if you stop at the end of a question and sound like you're going to be the person who speaks next, the conversation dries up.
Interesting.
Which is exactly what I just did.
Yeah.
Because what I just said was a statement. Didn't I? I realised. And then there was a silence because I just said a statement. Whereas actually what we learn intuitively to do is to turn a question to an offer, and then you hand it over to the other person. But one of the things that we're noticing about conversations is that when we accidentally do something else, we don't understand why the conversation dried up, and the conversation dried up often because we made it dry up, because we didn't, because of the music.
I see. I have an interesting subject to ask you. You've gone on what you call long walks, and tell us what motivated you to do those. And you must have some amazing stories. So tell us,
long walks.
A couple of highlights. What would be a highlight of one of your long walks?
Well, I started walking because I had depression, and somebody said you should walk. Be good for you.
Oh, good.
And then now I'm going to tell you the next thing. It's going to make me sound like Forrest Gump, but
no.
Well, that'll be okay.
Yeah.
So in 2019, I went with my husband to New Zealand, and we walked the Queen Charlotte track, which I think is about 70 miles, which is about 5 days. And then I'd organised a series of sponsored walks to raise money for, in England, we call it the Motor Neurone Disease Association. In the States, it's for ALS. And to raise money because a friend or two friends had been diagnosed with it. And we ended up having 350 people join us on sponsored walks, and we raised 100,000 British pounds. And we walked a half marathon every month for a year. And it was like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Every time we walked, we had more people walk with us. It was amazing. Anyway, our friend was dying, and he said to me and to his wife, I want you to walk the Camino in Spain. So the Camino in Spain is an ancient pilgrimage route that goes from all over Europe to the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. There's a film with Martin Sheen called The Way. It's really worth seeing. So we drove the Camino with John as he was losing his ability to walk. And he kept saying to Margaret and me, well, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And you can't turn around and go, when you're dead. But there was this commitment that we had made, she and I had made, that we would do this walk. We also committed to having a tattoo. I'm not quite sure when that happened and whether that was fantasy, but anyway, the deal was that we would walk 600 kilometers, and at the end of 600 kilometers, we would have a tattoo. So we flew to Bilbao, which is where we'd started the drive with John, because he couldn't walk. We'd taken a hire car and we'd driven the thing. And we walked for 5.5 weeks.
Fabulous.
We interviewed
every
somebody
night.
else that did that walk, and I can't think who it was right now, but they had
It's amazing.
amazing
It's
Yeah,
experience.
I know, and I would love to do it, although it's a big commitment.
We
Yeah,
slept.
sure.
Do you want some statistics? 600 kilometers, 5.5 weeks, 65 bedroom companions. So we slept in shared dormitories, which was extraordinary. I thought it would be weird and difficult, and I'm quite a fan of the ensuite bathroom, but also sharing a dormitory with 20 people and having one shower is also fine.
Mhm. I know.
Well, it was actually, once you go, it was all part of the experience. So
Mm.
it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and also the most extraordinary.
Hard
Because
because of physical and extraordinary because
physical,
of emotional.
and the people you meet, and the depth of conversation you have with somebody that you might never ever see again. And no status, so you don't know what anybody does. And when somebody says, where have you come from? They mean, where did you sleep last night? They don't mean LA. They mean, which hostel were you in when you woke up this morning? And when they say, where are you going? They mean, where are you going to sleep tonight? And you lose your identity. So local people, because you've got a backpack on, and pilgrims, almost every pilgrim on the Camino has a shell, which is the kind of symbol of a scallop shell, which is a symbol of the Camino. You have a shell on your backpack, and when you meet people, they go, "Oh, buen camino peregrino," which means good journey, good walk, pilgrim. And you don't have anything. You don't have anything to worry about apart from, did I get a blister today? It's just such a simple life. And I guess it probably, now I'm talking to you, and because you'd asked me, because we talked about Kenya earlier, it reminded me of those days when I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Camino, you have even less, because you have one change of clothes
That you have to wash daily.
Yeah, well, it was artful. We'd get to the hostel, and I would get in the shower with my clothes on, and I would use my very small amount of soap to wash myself and my clothes. And then I would put my other clothes on, and then I would dry the clothes. If you got there and it was still sunny, you could dry them in the sun. And if they weren't dry, I just strapped them on the back of my backpack.
Like a close
the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and everybody else, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you lose.
Well,
you're
it's
not
flapping in the breeze, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everything is special and nothing is special. And
So when you meet
just
people and you talk about it, do you usually recommend that they do this? Or do you say it's really difficult and maybe you should think twice? Or what is your attitude toward passing it along to somebody?
Well, I'm going back in the summer to do it again, to do another one on my own from Portugal.
How long a walk is that?
Well, I am really taking the pressure off this time. So this time I don't have a destination. So I might get to Santiago, but I might not. I might get the bus to the airport at the end if I haven't made it all the way. This time it's about being on my own, because last time I went with friends. So I want to be on my own, and I'll walk as far as I feel like, and then I'll stop. Whereas when you've got to get 600 kilometers, you've actually got to get to the destination you'd kind of planned for. But I would say, I honestly would recommend it, but do it, train, and do it at a pace that works for you. So we met a wonderful Swiss lady, and she was doing 8 miles a day.
Mm-hmm.
But young, ambitious people will do 28 miles a day.
Ooh, that's
25, 28 miles a day every day. And to be quite honest, I'm too old for that.
Yeah,
But you have to carry your own pack, so you really, really have very little with you. And I do recommend it, but it isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
You did 8 miles a day?
No, we did between. So this Swiss lady that I met was doing 8 miles a day, and that's what I think I'm going to do this year. But we did 15 miles a day most days, maybe
That's
sometimes
a
more.
lot. I hope you stopped in between.
Oh, yes, stopped. Oh, yeah. So to walk 15 miles, you'd take 6 hours, 7 hours. Well, you had all day because you didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
So you'd get up in the morning and start, and you'd do quite a lot. And then we'd always have breakfast after we'd done about 4 miles, if we could find somewhere to have breakfast. And then we were usually nearly at our destination by 2 o'clock or kind of late lunchtime. And we had a thing where we would stop 5 kilometers. So that's 3 miles. If there was a bar 3 miles from where we were going to end up, we'd stop and have a beer because we knew that we could manage the last 3 miles.
Make you a little sleepy and very relaxed, right?
Yeah, and then you'd get to the hostel, you'd have your shower and wash your clothes, and then you'd have a sleep because you didn't have anything else you had to do, you see, because you'd washed your clothes. The only other thing you had to do was have your dinner.
Right.
And Claire, what would you like our listeners to have as a takeaway today? And as a part of that, can you please mention the coaching services that you offer?
I can. The takeaway would be less is more. And whether you're a coach or or in any part of your life, I think that having less, doing a bit less can often be better. So if you want to talk about coaching or mentor coaching or supervision or any of the things we've talked about, all my books, it's all up my website, which is www.3dcoaching.com. I think that's in the show notes. And my email address is claire@3dcoaching.com.
Excellent.
Thank you, Claire. That's great. Yeah, less is more. Good advice. Thank you. Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Claire Pedrick, coach and speaker and host of the Coaching In podcast, and author of 2 books, coaching books called Simplifying Coaching and the Human Behind the Coach. And Claire, you can, like she said, you can reach her at her website, Claire. Well, this is her email, claire@3dcoaching.com. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're grateful to our listeners, and we want to ask you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Late Boomers Podcast, where you can watch the video version of our podcast. Also, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and give us a 5-star review. We're on Instagram @I am Kathy Worthington and @I am Mary Elkins and @Late Boomers. We always strive to inspire and to entertain you. Thanks again, Claire, so much.
Thank you. What an absolute delight to spend time with you both.
It's been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.